Yeah, I mean, first off, as a conservative and somebody who spent decades working in Republican politics and campaigns, is something that I'm particularly interested in and attuned to. And it's clear that the platforms are not politically biased and certainly don't have bias towards conservatives. And if you look at the evidence and you look at how different candidates and campaigns and individuals have used all of these platforms over the last few years in particular, it's been a great way for conservatives to get their voice out.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what is the evidence exactly? Because just because it has been a good platform for conservatives to get out their message doesn't mean that the algorithm is fair when you type something in.
Look, when you do a search, I mean, actually, after the president made his accusations, I tested it out myself. I put in Trump News, and the first thing that came up was Fox News, and then right below that was actually the tweets from the president himself complaining about the platforms. And so, I mean, the fact that you're able to see complaints about the platforms on the platforms is one proof point. And the other, it's really not in the business interest of the companies to pick one political side after the other. The whole purpose of all these platforms is to be open and transparent and allow all sides to flourish, and that's what's happening.
I did the same thing you did, Michael, and I saw what you saw, but I also saw that if I looked through onto page 2, 3, 4, 5, the top 100 pop-ups there, not pop-ups, that's not the wrong word, search results for the phrase Trump News, most of them were from what people on the right, the president might call the mainstream or fake news. A lot of CNN, a lot of New York Times, a lot Reuters, BBC, and so forth. There were not many, if any, that came from readily identifiable conservative news sites other than Fox.
Look, I mean, if the complaint is about the news coverage that the president is getting, that is a completely different issue. All a search engine can do...
No, it's about the search results that pop up and where they come from and why they tend to sample the way they do.
The search results can only be responsive and only represent the news and the coverage that's out there, and they do that in a way that is not biased. They do it by a way that has the most relevant and not politically biased things at all. And so sometimes you might have Fox as your first search, and other times it might be CNN. If you have an issue with CNN's coverage, you can look and click on a different news source.
So when we're talking about the social media algorithms, I mean, what you get is this letter then today on the heels of the president's complaint about Google, complaining that their conservative voices within their company culture are silenced, that they feel like they don't have the opportunity to speak out. Does Silicon Valley have a problem on its hand with the culture and potentially implicit bias?
Look, the political views of employees does not translate to the way the platforms operate and the experience that individuals across the country and around the world have on the platforms. It's certainly not in the business interest to pick one political party or one ideology over another. That's not something that's happening on the platforms. And again, if you look at the campaigns that we're seeing now and over the last few years in particular, when social media has really flourished in the campaign and political sense, conservatives in particular have been able to get their voice out and have built audiences of millions and tens of millions, and the president is a great example of that. The reason the president loves social media so much and uses it on a daily basis is because he can talk directly to his supporters and anybody around the country, around the world, without a filter. And that's what happens on these platforms, and that's why it's a great thing for freedom of speech and democracy around the world.